everyone, this is Kenneth the K-Rock Cline coming to you with episode 49 of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. Yes, that is right, folks. Episode 49, one more episode away from the big 5-0. Woohoo! Yeah! Right, I don't want to get too excited about that because I need to focus on completing episode number 49 first and foremost. Anyways, folks, we got some interesting topics that we need to talk about here. First of all, we're going to be discussing a historically massive contract signed by Juan Soto. You'll learn about exactly what the deals are, what my thoughts of the opinions are, and of course where he's going to be. And this will be kind of a surprise, but I don't know if you can necessarily say it'll be a surprise when you think about it in hindsight. And then, well, we're going to be discussing the college bowl games, particularly with one college bowl game that has been brought to my attention, and something that I'm pretty sure is not going to be one that, well, let's just put it this way, it's going to be a family feud. You'll learn more about that college bowl game situation in just a moment. But first and foremost, folks, I got to be a little bit honest with you. I know that this has been a very good channel. Well, this has been a podcast where I talk about sports and everything. Sometimes I might throw in some other subjects as well. But I had a conversation with my little brother, Andrew, who has been interested in getting back into the podcasting world. And, well, he basically has told me, like, he tried a podcast a while back. He did it at first, but then kind of, he had some other things going on with work-related stuff and all of that. So that's kind of why hasn't done a podcast in a while, but he's also kind of been thinking about getting back into podcasting game. So we had a conversation, and he was wondering, if it would be really great if he would like to help me out with the show and everything. He said that it would be my show, it would be the way, I could see things run, and he would like to sort of help me out, be a manager and everything. And listen, I really want to do a podcast with my little brother at some point. At some point, I'm not saying, we're going to do a podcast, hopefully, in the future, because I feel like we need to discuss some things in particular. However, at this particular time, I feel like with everything that's going on in my life, not only with work and everything, but just got some other hobbies going on, it's kind of hard for me to see me do a podcast with him this time around. But I do plan on working side by side with him in the near future. So I'm not necessarily giving up on that. But I am also, but I'm still focused on trying to, put myself out there and, also working and everything. So I just got a lot going on, and it's nothing against him, but he knows how I feel about it. We talked. I was honest. I said, look, I want to do a podcast with you, but right now it's just not the time. But eventually we're going to, so don't worry about that, folks. But anyway, he was talking to me about how he had plans on doing a podcast, which was referring to back in my day, where he would talk about things that he grew up around, which are in contrast to things that are happening in today's world. And, I was doing some thinking. I've seen a lot of social media stuff on YouTube and everything. By the way, you can get this podcast on KWC-LINE 91. That's my YouTube channel, and also with Podbean and Spotify. But, yeah, I was seeing a lot of stuff on YouTube, where the YouTube channel user or describer basically talked about their life in particular, things that had gone on in their lives and all. Like, they're sharing it with the audience in a way, or stuff that happened in the past. Hey, how did you meet your wife? Or what was your most embarrassing moment? Or what was your, favorite thing to do growing up? Or who was your role model? All these things, like stories that they like to tell and everything. And when I first started this podcast, I basically did do a little quick segment about some questions, basically asking, about my favorite things in life, or just, trying to get the audience to know about me as more. But I kind of lost track of that, just because, I guess I wanted to be a little bit more sports friendly and all of that. So I decided that I'm going to get back to that eventually. I'm going to start redoing some questions for myself, so that way y'all can get to know the real me in a way. So I feel like I haven't done a great job about that, so I do apologize for that as well, because I feel like, you're listening to this podcast and you're basically saying, like, you're hearing me talk about sports, you're hearing my thoughts and all of that. Like, you might have the same thoughts, you might have some different thoughts, but I don't know if you really know me as a person. I mean, you know who I root for, you know my opinions on certain subjects, but you don't really know about me in particular in my life. And I feel like I haven't done a really great job of that. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a random question generator and ask myself a question or ask and answer myself a question to one that I think would be of really good use. So here we go. Picking a random question here. If you could relive any day of your life, what day would you choose and what would you do differently? That's a good question. If I could relive any day of my life, what day would I choose and what would you do differently? Well, I mean, there has been a very dark day in my life that has really been haunting me, but out of respect, I am not going to go down that much, to tell you the truth. Man, this is a tough question. Like, there's definitely been some big moments in my life, in particular, and all that. I guess you can say that if I had to relive my life, any day of my life, it would have to be the day which okay, I'm just gonna flat out straight with it. I feel like I should say that it would be my high school graduation. I mean, that's the first thing that pops into my head. So, interesting story about that. I was the statistician for my high school baseball team. We were in the middle of a playoff series, and in high school, and I think this is still common nowadays with every state, it's a best 2 out of 3. So you had to win 2 games in a 3-game series in order to advance to the next round. So we were in the regional semifinals, and we were playing Brazoswood. I was a statistician for Spring Branch Memorial, by the way. Go Mustangs, of course. So I was a statistician for Memorial, and we were playing Brazoswood, who was a very good team. We won the first game, but then they won the second game. And there was a little bit of rain delay that kind of halted things in the second game, which kind of prevented us from winning. So game 3 was going to be Saturday night. Unfortunately, the morning of that game was our graduation day. So I remember I went to my graduation, had my cap and gown and all that, and walked across the stage. And I don't remember what happened. Something happened to me. I don't remember if I tripped or if I did something wrong, but, I don't know. So, I mean, one thing I would do differently is not trip, and maybe I would have probably done something really cool, but I don't know what was cool back in 2010 in contrast to nowadays where you have people on TikTok and, doing social media and everything. So anyway, I graduated from high school, and normally, once you graduate, you walk the stage, you return to your seat, and then, as soon as the ceremony ends, you toss your caps up in the air, recognizing, hey, you graduated and all that. Well, I didn't do that. The reason why was that I ended up having to leave early because our team was going to bus all the way to the ballpark, which the regional semifinals was to be played at. And sure enough, I remember the bus ride and then going to the game. And then, fortunately, our guys ended up winning that day, so it turned out to be a memorable graduation thing. Unfortunately, my relatives who were in town to see me, or, celebrate my graduation with me, actually didn't get to see me, so I wasn't there. They ended up watching or listening to the broadcast of the high school baseball game, and I know they were very happy when my team won that day. So it was a remarkable day, kind of a day that, you look back and you say, man, definitely would like to relive over. I mean, there's probably better days that I would like to relive again, and certainly some days I would do differently, but that's the one that kind of comes to mind as a joyous moment there. So that is a great segment for me. So that's kind of something that I like to, bring back if I can, talking about myself as a person, because I feel like I haven't done that as well. So hopefully I can continue to get back on track with this, but I know we got a lot more to talk about, so we're going to step aside, but when we come back, we're going to be discussing the Juan Soto contract. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. I received, technically, we all received some breaking news out of Major League Baseball, and this is a shocker. Well, kind of a shocker in terms of the salary, the amount that's being made here, but not so much for the team. So anyways, Major League Baseball is currently having their winter meetings. It's down in Dallas, Texas. I asked my brother Andrew to maybe see if he can talk to General Manager Dana Brown for some ways to get the Astros to be back in contention, or otherwise just get ready for a rebuild, which hopefully doesn't take too long and we can get back to contending for more championships in the near future at least. But anyways, winter meetings are going on in Major League Baseball, and breaking news, Juan Soto, arguably the biggest named free agent in all the season, has signed a contract. He is going back to New York, but it's not with the New York Yankees. It is going to be Juan Soto joining the New York Mets. And folks, let me tell you, this contract is without question the biggest contract in the history of sports as of right now. Reading out an Instagram account that I just picked up, the New York Mets have signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million contract, the largest in American professional sports history. You are not misled. You are hearing that right, ladies and gentlemen. $765 million for 15 years with the New York Mets. And, you know, I can't say that I'm surprised that it's the Mets, because the Mets have always been one of those teams that have tried to gain free agents and add superstar talented players. A couple of years ago, they added Francisco Lindor, who has been pretty good for them, but the Mets haven't really been able to get anything going until this past year when they reached the National League Championship Series, though they ended up losing to the eventual World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Yeah, whatever, and all that. But look at this. $765 million to Juan Soto. That is insane. Like, you know, I was born in the 1990s, and nobody was making $100 million per sports until Alonzo Mourning for the Miami Heat became the first ever player in the NBA, and I want to say it was the NBA, maybe in all professional sports, to sign a contract that was worth $100 million. Of course, for those of you that probably don't know, that was one of the biggest reasons why Shaquille O'Neal asked for a deal that much better than that, and that's why he ended up going to the Los Angeles Lakers after his rookie contract with the Orlando Magic came to an end. And that, of course, is what led Shaq to have the success he had with LA, winning 3 straight titles along with Kobe Bryant, and leaving Orlando in the thought of Fantasyland. And I sometimes feel bad for the Orlando Magic because, man, if Shaq had stayed with the Magic, I think they would have won a championship or so. But anywho, just continuing to read this Instagram post here, the Mets were pretty adamant they were going to be all in on Soto this offseason, and money wouldn't be the issue. In the end, Steve Cohen gets it done and snags Soto from the crosstown Yankees. Soto, 26, is a Hall of Fame talent, one of the best all-around young hitters in modern MLB history. Soto hit 200 home runs before his 26th birthday and could one day be the all-time walk leader with the way he gets on base. Soto proved he could handle the pressure of New York with 41 homers and an OPS of under 1.0 with the Yankees this past season, and he's staying in New York, just not with the AL champs. At $51 million per year, Soto will be under contract with the Mets through 2039, assuming we all make it that far. And, I mean, this is the crazy thing about these contracts. Like, it is so insane that we have come to this point. It is absolutely ridiculous that, you know, we're seeing all these contracts go up. Not only that, but we're talking about a big marketed team. Like, in terms of Major League Baseball, the Mount Rushmore of teams, the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Boston Red Sox are arguably the top 4 teams in the biggest market. Now, last time I heard, well, let's just keep it at that. I don't want to go into who's number 5 and all that. But anyways, the fact is that the New York Mets can somehow get Juan Soto for that amount. And yet, they're still being joked about as the team that has to pay former Mets player or former player Bobby Bonilla a deferred contract after he signed a lucrative offer to play with the Mets the second go-round. And, of course, they have to continue paying him even after his career came to an end. So this is kind of insane, like, when you really think about it. I mean, the New York Mets, I respect Steve Cohen. He's able to secure and snag the big players. But, man, I tell you what, like, Juan Soto really had himself a great postseason for the Yankees. He was probably, I want to say he was one of the best hitters in the postseason until the World Series, where everything just kind of came crashing down. But I feel that, we're talking about a situation now where we have a young guy who's still 26 years old and could potentially retire as a New York Met in 2039 when he's about 41 years old at least. And, this is my big thing with this contract, because it is eye-dropping. It is like mouth-shattering, or like the brain cannot comprehend, or it's hard to comprehend because of the shock that we feel about this contract. But I feel that it is a lot of money. But somehow my concern is that this has disaster written all over it. Now, I'm not saying that Juan Soto won't be a bad player or won't be a good player for the Mets. He's going to be a great fit for them, and I think that's definitely going to put the Mets in contention to represent the National League in the World Series and possibly win it all. But my biggest issue is with these contracts. 15 years. There is no guarantee that a player is going to stay with one franchise for 15 years. Because in today's world, we're not seeing loyalty play out as much. Like, we can talk about some of the great players. I mean, Aaron Judge, to me, is a guy that I think is going to stay with the New York Yankees. Although there was that one infamous tweet that Arson Judge, no relation to Aaron Judge, just a fictional guy that was made up by John Heyman, accidentally, of course. He had tweeted out that Arson Judge was going to go to the San Francisco Giants. Now, of course, this was when Judge was a free agent, and a lot of people were wondering if he was going to stay with New York or if he was going to go elsewhere. And ultimately, he decided to sign a new contract with the Yankees. And, last year he had himself a really great year up to the World Series. But, eventually, this is kind of the crazy part with these deals. Juan Soto is going to be a New York Met for 15 years. Is that guaranteed that he'll stay all 15 years? Who knows? Does he make the Mets a strong contender to win the National League pennant? Yeah, he does. I mean, you got him, you got Francisco Lindor. Pete Alonso is still there, although I'm not sure what the circumstances here. But like when you look at the lineup for the Mets, this is crazy. Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Juan Soto batting third, Pete Alonso, home run champion or derby champ, batting cleanup, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Francisco Alvarez, and then a combination of Jeff McNeil and Luis Angel Acuna at second base, for the time being, of course. And this is this kind of has a very interesting look at it. I think that Juan Soto does make the Mets better. But going back to my big concern, when it comes to these lucrative offers, you're basically putting a lot of pressure on a player to perform in the big spotlight. And it's really unfortunate because a team like the Washington Nationals, who actually drafted Juan Soto, and he was instrumental in a championship in 2019, which I'm not going to go into that as much, but he was instrumental for that team. He can't do the same thing in, let's say, Colorado, in Denver, or picking a random American League team, the Kansas City Royals. He can't do the same thing with those franchises because none of those ball clubs have the same amount of revenue and interest that you have with the Mets and Yankees. Because Juan Soto developed into the player that is highly skilled and highly talented, a guy that was really an instrumental part of the Yankees' success. So it is really unfortunate that Major League Baseball has kind of let this whole money laundering contract thing get out of hand, because the Dodgers have already gotten themselves a strong pitcher with Blake Snell, who was a Cy Young Award winner and has gone from the Padres and all that. Like, I think it's a little bit unfair, but hey, I mean, if I were a Dodgers fan or a Mets fan, I'd be all hyped up. Man, this is great. This is exciting, and all this yada, yada, yada. Like, this is basically a way to get fans excited to get a player of superstar caliber. Again, you have to perform in the postseason, and I think Juan Soto is a guy that can help the New York Mets get themselves a run to, a World Series for this upcoming season. But man, I tell you what, just the contract as a whole, I mean, $56 million. Like, I never even thought that we would even get to that number. I don't think anybody did, but it's kind of shocking. But yet, I feel like one of these days we're going to see $800 million. I don't know who's it going to be. I don't know what sport it's going to be. But right now, I feel like baseball might be the more likely option to have an $800 million contract guy for the time being. So it is shocking. It is interesting when you look at it. But ultimately, you know what? At this point, let's just go out there and, just enjoy what Juan Soto can do for the New York Mets. Because the Mets have always been a franchise that has bought themselves some players, tried to get themselves in championship contention, haven't really gotten themselves any big-time moves. Maybe we're in contention for the playoffs, but of course you're running into the Atlanta Braves, the Philadelphia Phillies. Now you finally have a chance to really make the next leap. You got close to the World Series, you lost to the Dodgers, but now you have a big opportunity to get yourself a championship and prove that you're not the little brother to the New York Yankees. Well, they may always be the little brother to the Yankees, but you know what? Hey, it's the Mets. They're always a big, lovable team, whether you love to support them or love to hate them and all that. But it's a big move for the New York Mets. I am very shocked in all that. So, although there are some questions I do have as far as what this does to the other players that are now a contract. I mean, I would say outside of Juan Soto, probably the second big name player, of course, is Alex Bregman. Now, I know that Bregman, there was an offer the Astros have given him, 6 years for $156 million. But, of course, Bregman and his agent, Scott Boras, who's also an agent to Juan Soto, they wanted somewhere around $200,000. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens and what this does to the franchise, to whether or not they can continue to compete or contend or maybe get themselves ready for a rebuild. Again, hoping that it's not a long rebuild like the last time, but we'll just have to wait and see. So, in the meantime, though, big news for the Mets. I hope you guys are very excited and very happy. And now, folks, we're going to step aside for a moment, but when we come back, we are going to be discussing college football and the one bowl game that will certainly have my family trying to avoid so hard not to have a family feud. Folks, we are back, and of course, college football is at the point where it's the best time of college football. Of course, I'm talking about the bowl games. And this year, of course, the big story for college football is the inaugural 12-team playoff. That's right, 12 teams are going to compete in a playoff. The top 4 seeds get an automatic bye. The rest of the field competes against each other to go up against the top 4 seeds. So it's going to be real interesting. I can't wait to see, how everything plays out in college football. But let me start off by saying this. I'm very impressed with Indiana for having a great season in college football. They were like the darlings of the Big Ten for a while until they ended up losing the game to Ohio State, who also made the college football playoff scenario. I'm also impressed with SMU. Yes, I know this is a Dallas team we're talking about, and you know how I feel about Dallas teams. But I have to say, SMU really belonged in the ACC, and I give them all credit to Dabo Swinney for showing the respect they had after the remarkable game, the remarkable finish in which Clemson ended up winning the ACC championship 34-31. So, and there was a lot of talk about should SMU be in the playoffs, and a lot of people say yes, they should, but at the expense of who? Well, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, Alabama is not going to be in the college football playoff. Yes, folks, that is correct. Alabama, for the first time, not in the college football playoff, a 12-team college football playoff. And I got to tell you what, I think once Nick Saban left the Alabama program, I think it's clear that this was going to be a very bad situation for Alabama. I mean, they had a really good season. They did beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl and this and that, but that one loss to Oklahoma was certainly going to have a major impact on that situation. So, needless to say, a remarkable achievement for all the teams that have made it to the college bowl game. So we have Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State as the top 4 teams. Texas at 5, Penn State 6, Notre Dame 7, Ohio State 8, Tennessee 9, Indiana 10, SMU 11, and Clemson 12. And a little bit surprised that SMU is ahead of Clemson despite losing to them in the ACC championship game. But, well, it is what it is. So you just have to be real happy. But anyways, the first round of the playoff is actually going to start on December the 20th when we'll have the wild card teams, if you will, compete against each other. And then we're going to move right into New Year's Eve, and then, of course, the New Year's, which should be a real fun time for all of the college football teams. But first, folks, let's talk about some of the other bowl games, particularly one bowl game that has kind of caught my attention. And, folks, I got to say, first and foremost, this is a very weird situation for me because not only is this a bowl game between 2 colleges that I have, respect for in a way, but to tell you the truth, it is a family feud. It's Family Feud with Baylor and LSU. And here's your host, Richard Dawson. No, Steve Harvey. No, it's Kenneth the K-Rock Cline. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Family Feud. Yes, this is a Family Feud show, and, well, let's just be real honest, folks. It's a family feud kind of a thing. Now, when I say family feud, I don't mean we're in a family or I'm in a family that's fighting each other right now. I mean, I love my family. We have not had a feud in a long time, and heaven forbid, hopefully that does not happen in the near future. So, that being said, the Texas Bowl, which will take place in Houston on New Year's Eve at 2:30 p.m., will be between Baylor and LSU. And I'll tell you what, folks, this matchup is really the one that intrigues me the most, considering the fact that all time, these 2 teams have met each other 7 times in the history of their respective franchises. And LSU currently has a 4-3 lead against Baylor. But the last time these 2 teams met was on December 27th, 1985. Yes, almost 40 years ago did Baylor and LSU meet last time. And that for those that are wondering, Baylor did beat LSU 21-7. And 1985, that was a pretty remarkable year for Baylor University, I think, because I think looking back at that season, the biggest highlight for Baylor, let's see, they were 9-3 under Grant Taft in his 14th season. They finished 3rd in the Southwest Conference behind Texas A&M and Arkansas. But that was the year that Baylor traveled out to USC and actually upset the number 3 ranked Trojans by the final of 20-13. They were off to a great start. They were about 7-1 near entering the month of November, and then of course they ended up losing to Arkansas, but then won against Rice, only to lose to Texas, and that set them up for a Liberty Bowl matchup against LSU, which they won 21-7. So that is the last time that Baylor has actually defeated or took on LSU for that matter. And so it's kind of weird how college football programs can go 30 to 40 plus years without playing against each other, whether because they're in different conferences or they'll have a situation where every once in a while they'll compete against each other in like a home and away game. And I was kind of surprised that Baylor hadn't done that with LSU. Ultimately, though, I can understand because these two programs were kind of at different wavelengths since then. I mean, LSU had some good programs in the 90s, but they really didn't have that revitalization until the early 2000s when Nick Saban led them to a national championship. And then Les Miles came in and elevated that program even further. Then Miles gets let go, Ed Ogeron comes in, and the 2019 LSU Tigers, arguably one of the greatest college football teams of all time, with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase running the offense, and then, of course, Derek Stingley Jr., another great player on the LSU defensive side. Yeah, that was a remarkable team, and certainly LSU has kind of been on the downward spiral, not in a very bad way, but this past season for them has been very underachieving for them, to say the least. Because I mean, you entered this season, and I really thought that LSU was very capable of turning things around. Like last year, it was such a big disappointment for the Tigers. But let's talk about LSU first and foremost to get ahead of their season. So in Brian Kelly's, I want to say his third year with the program, they traveled out to Vegas, lost to USC 27-20. Then they won their next 3, 4, 5 games, 6 games. Sorry, I'm looking at LSU's schedule here. They won their next 6 games, and so LSU was in position, feeling really good about themselves, and they were actually ranked as high as number 8. But then they traveled down to College Station and lost to Texas A&M, which was something that was unexpected. Then the following week, they got destroyed by Alabama, 42-13, down in Baton Rouge. And then, believe it or not, folks, they lost to a Florida team that early in the season was getting nabbed at so much that Billy Napier, the head coach for the team, was actually in line to possibly be getting fired. But Florida somehow turned their season around, and huge success for them. And LSU could have just sat in the water and say, this isn't looking good. We're sitting at 6-4. We're definitely not in position to make the playoffs. But we could have just folded the season right then and there. But they said, no, we're going to try to finish the season strong, hopefully build some confidence for next season. And sure enough, they did. Now, they defeated Vanderbilt, but it was a really close game. They ended up winning by 7 points. And then they destroyed Oklahoma 37-17. So LSU finishes the regular season 8-4, and they are now competing in the Texas Bowl. And this is something that the Tigers are looking to complete a good season. Then you have the Baylor Bears, whose story is somewhat similar, except there's a little bit of tweaks in everything. So here's a key storyline for you folks. Dave Aranda is the head coach of Baylor. He was the defensive coordinator at LSU when they won their national championship. So you have to think that this is something that is going to be really interesting. A coach going up against his former team who he won a national championship with, this is a remarkable story. Now, here's the crazy part about Baylor's schedule. They started out with a win over Tarleton State at 45-3. Then they go up to Utah to take on the Utes, who were number 11 at the time, and they lost a disappointing game. They destroy Air Force 31-3 and led by 7 against Colorado the next week. Looked like they were in position to win when all of a sudden the wheels came off from them, and it was a Hail Mary pass that unfortunately tied the game for the Buffaloes, who then ended up winning the game in overtime. Heartbreaking loss. It's one of those losses that you just never quite get over. And then, unfortunately, they lost the next 2 games. They lost to BYU, a close game, but then they ended up losing to Iowa State. So, at that point, through 6 games, Baylor is 2-4, and everyone's thinking, well, Coach Aranda, this is the time. Like, he hadn't really been able to be successful. He came in after Matt Rule had built the team to take them to a Big 12 championship appearance, and he basically led Baylor to its best season ever, not only winning the Big 12 title, but also the Sugar Bowl with a win over Ole Miss. So the Bears, at this stage, they haven't been able to duplicate that success. And at 2-4, everyone's thinking, well, this is probably going to be Aranda's last rodeo with the team. Baylor might need to be looking for a new head coach. They're not playing real well. It's going to be the end of the line for him. Not so fast, says Baylor. The Bears destroyed Texas Tech. They beat Oklahoma State. They finally got a big win over their arch rival TCU. Then they followed that up with their first win ever at Morgantown, West Virginia, 49-35. They go down to Houston to win, and then most recently they destroyed Kansas 45-17. And a lot of people were thinking Kansas was getting some momentum as Big 12 killers. Well, that didn't sit well with Baylor, and Baylor, of course, took care of business there. So Baylor, on a 6-game winning streak in probably its finest season, well, not necessarily the best season, but probably its most incredible turnaround of a season ever, has managed to get themselves into Texas Bowl. And the last time Baylor was at the Texas Bowl was in 2018 when they defeated Vanderbilt in a high shootout, 45-38. That game, of course, was special considering that Baylor had been through a really dark period in their program history. I won't get into details on that. Matt Rule came in. He had a 1-win season his first year. That season, Baylor made the bowl game, and they ended up, winning that game against Vanderbilt, which was a remarkable thing. So definitely a big win for them at that stage. And LSU's last appearance at the Texas Bowl was in 2022. They got destroyed by Kansas State 42-20. So, yeah, a couple of years ago, and that's a memory that's going to be hard to overcome if you're, if you're the Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers in a way. So, and of course, there was that game in 2015 which LSU won, defeated Texas Tech 56-27. However, that win has been vacated because of a booster-related violation. So, needless to say, LSU has kind of lost their last 2 games. So this is an opportunity for them to get a little bit of redemption as well. Now, this game, a lot of people might look at this and say, well, even though Baylor is arguably the hottest team, one of the hottest teams in all of college football, having won their last 6 games, they're taking on an LSU team with something to prove. LSU was supposed to be one of the teams that was expected to make the conference football playoff or college football playoff, and they had not done that. And there's definitely been some underperforming there as well. Brian Kelly has had a tremendous staff or season. Well, he had a successful reputation, but then his time at LSU has not quite gone the way he and the Tigers would definitely like to have. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to LSU in this case, or what happens to LSU in this game. We could sit here and talk about everything that has gone wrong for LSU, that 3-game losing streak, which really doomed their chances of making a college football playoff. The hype that they were expected to come in. There's clearly, they just haven't been able to figure it out. And that's something that I feel like LSU would like to take an opportunity to get a win here against Baylor in essence, to try to prove that they belong in the SEC and hopefully get themselves in the college football playoff conversation next year. Baylor is the same thing. They were a team that struggled out of the gates, and Dave Aranda seemed to be coaching for his life, but at least for next year, the Bears have saved Dave Aranda's job, and we'll see if he can continue to do that in the time being as well. So here's here's something the thing that's bothering me more about this game, and I said earlier this was going to be a family feud, and the reason why I said that is because my brother and I both went to Baylor University, but my brother is also a fan of LSU. When we were growing up, the game room in our house was always hogged up, not like Arkansas hogged. No, I'm talking about occupied solely by Andrew, my brother Andrew, because LSU would always play their games. He would have the seat. He would sit in there and watch LSU play with his LSU jersey on, and he would keep watching until LSU lost. And then once they lost, it was like, so what? What gives, But he's a fan. He loves LSU and all that. And it's amazing to me when I think about it, because my brother, I thought, was going to go to LSU. I think he wanted to go to LSU. Like, he wasn't committed to LSU, like, when he was looking at colleges and everything. But you can kind of get the sense and the feeling that Andrew was going to go to LSU. And that would have been fine, because I would have liked for him to go to LSU. Now, of course, I had gone to Baylor and graduated from Baylor at that time. So, but I was happy for Andrew. I would have wanted him to go to LSU. And that's where I thought he was going to go. Well, thanks to a certain pastor and a good friend of Andrew's, there was a change of heart, and my brother ended up going to Baylor. So yeah, he ended up changing his mind, and he ended up going to LSU, or going to Baylor. So that was a bit of a shocker. But then again, my pastor and my friend, who's also Andrew's friend, has a way of convincing people otherwise. And so shout out to them. They definitely did a tremendous job of recruiting my brother to go to Baylor, and it has paid off very well. So, in a way, that is where this whole thing has kind of gotten us into a little bit of conflict here, because we have family members who are diehard LSU fans, and one of our uncles went to LSU, and it's one of those things, like, you love them so much, you never would have expected our family to get into a little bit of a conflict. Now, I say it's a conflict, but it's not. I mean, we're all going to have a good time. We're all going to love each other regardless of the result and everything. But, the shots have already been fired, but nothing too significant. Nothing much as to say, you suck, we're going to kick your you-know-what and everything. More like, go Tigers or sick and Bears, depending on how you look at it. So, this is kind of a weird situation, and the fact that it's happening on New Year's Eve, it just is a little bit torture. But the sad part about all this is my brother is not going to be able to watch that game because he's got to work that day. I mean, come on, people. His job, you need to let him take the day off. It's New Year's Eve, for crying out loud. I mean, he should not be working New Year's Eve, okay? Let's just be honest. He should spend some time watching a game, but he can't watch the game, and that's what's really the unfortunate thing about this matchup. Like, the other thing that bothers me about this match is that there were people in Waco and Baylor fans around the nation that wanted Texas A&M, and they wanted an opportunity to reignite the rivalry because it made sense. You have Baylor, you have Texas A&M from College Station, which is about an hour and a half away from Waco. And, you'd send them down to Houston. It would be a Battle of the Bayou rematch, a big opportunity to reignite their rivalry. A&M got to reignite their rivalry with Texas this year. Why not A&M reignite a rivalry with Baylor this year? Well, suffice to say, that has not quite worked out. A&M, of course, declined the invitation according to sources, and they ended up having to go to Vegas to take on USC. So... Well, we'll see if that decision pays off in a big way for A&M. Let's put it that way. But, so, the question now that I have is, can Baylor win? Can Baylor beat LSU? A couple years ago, Baylor did beat Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, and it was a pretty convincing win. But at the same time, Ole Miss, with all due respect, isn't Baylor or isn't LSU. And there's going to be a lot of hype around this game, considering that, LSU is going up against Dave Aranda, former LSU defensive coordinator. The quarterback, Garrett Newsmeyer, who's been named one of the finalists for the Manning Award as the best quarterback in the game. And, on the other hand, you have some incredible players for both sides. It's going to be a real interesting situation for the two teams. And I really think that what we're going to see is a game between two teams that have something to prove. LSU needing to win this game to prove that they should have been, that what fans saw from them all throughout the season was not them. Was not, them the entire season. They want to prove that they should have been in the bowl game or at least been in the college football playoff. They have an opportunity to do that by taking on Baylor. As far as Baylor is concerned, they are currently on a 6-game winning streak, and it's the sixth or the fifth longest active streak, only behind Oregon, Boise State, Notre Dame, and Marshall. And in a sense, Baylor has an opportunity to get a win against LSU to prove to the nation, look, we didn't make the college football playoff this year. We weren't a good team to start things off with, but we had a remarkable finish to a great season, and we could be a threat to at least make the college football playoff. It's going to take a lot of things to happen for Baylor to get themselves back in position. But clearly, this is an opportunity for the Baylor Bears with the chance to get themselves a massive win over LSU. So it's going to be hard to say who I think is going to win because on one hand, I mean, everyone knows that I am a Baylor gold, green and gold and all, and I would like for Baylor to win, but I also have tremendous respect for LSU because of my family members that support LSU and all, and it's really tough. I really want to make a pick for this one, but I just don't know if I can make a pick in this case because I think it's a little bit unfair. So as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that I am going to say or pick is that our family members are going to continue to love each other and support each other regardless of the outcome. So that being said, sick and bears anyways. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the whole LSU situation there, and hopefully you guys have, or LSU Baylor situation, and hopefully you guys have some great opinions and insights as far as who you think is going to win the game. That game, of course, will be on New Year's Eve, so we will have about 3 weeks before we get to watch this game, so it should be a good one, and yeah, going to be real exciting in this sense. So anyways, folks, we're going to step aside again. Well, when we come back, I'm going to be giving out my predictions for this upcoming NFL week. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Folks, it is time for the NFL predictions, and last week, guys, not so good week. Well, I ended up going 8-5 into 13 games that were played. The only positive, of course, was that 140 wins have been reached before 70, so that's a great accomplishment for me. So I'm 140-68 for the 208 games that I got to predict for this season. Hopefully, I can keep it up this week. Anyways, folks, from here on out, no bye weeks. Every team is going to be playing for these next 4 weeks, and these last 4 weeks of the season are going to be critical for teams vying for a playoff spot, vying for good seeding, all that. So it should be fun. Anyways, here we go. Starting things off with Thursday night for Week 15, the Rams and the 49ers. And the 49ers have a lot of stuff going on. There's some injuries that they've been dealing with in a way, and Deebo Samuel, who has been called out for saying, well, it's not really my fault because I'm not getting the ball as much. Yeah, you are getting the ball. You're just not catching the ball. The Twitter community called him out. I still call it Twitter community, even though it's X now, which, I mean, I'm not going to call Dyken Park. I'm still going to call Minute Maid Park. I'm not going to call Twitter X. I'm still going to call it Twitter. You get it? Anyways, so, but basically, I'm going to say the Rams are going to win this one because I think the Rams are feeling a little bit of momentum here in the NFC West, and that's definitely gotten them confidence. They are 1 game back behind the Seattle Seahawks. They've won their last 2, and I think they're going to continue to build on that momentum. So the Rams win that one. Washington and New Orleans. Now, New Orleans won a bit of an ugly game last week, but I don't know if they'll be able to continue that, get a little bit of momentum. Now, the Commanders have kind of fallen off a little bit in a way, but they did win their last game. So I think Washington is going to be all right for this one. So I'm going to pick Washington to beat New Orleans. Then we got Kansas City and Cleveland. Now, Jameis Winston is having a remarkable turnaround to his season. I know he stepped into a very awkward situation given the fact that the Browns were a mess going up with the whole Deshaun Watson deal and all that. But Winston, who, well, even though he got brutally bad against the New Orleans, well, actually that was a couple weeks ago, They lost to the Steelers, unfortunately. He had a couple of turnovers there, and then they lost to the Broncos. So they lost their last 2 games, and I'm having a hard time seeing Winston lead the Browns to a victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, of course, continue to get the breaks. I don't know if this will be another close game that Kansas City will have to deal with, but I think it's going to be fair to say that Kansas City will win this one over Cleveland. So sorry, Winston. I know you want to turn things around, but not against Kansas City. Cincinnati and Tennessee. Yes, this is the matchup that I think fans will definitely want to watch if they want to have hopes for the AFC North. As far as the Cincinnati Bengals are concerned, well, maybe having a strong finish here because as of now they're currently 5-8, and at best we're looking at a team that could potentially finish with a winning record at 9-8, but it's going to be real hard to see them in the playoffs unless things kind of fall down. But I'm going to give Cincinnati the win here against Tennessee. I think they definitely have played much better, and Will Levis just continues to find ways to get himself messed up here. Yeah, he's definitely not had the hype and everything. So I think Joe Burrow will continue to play, and much like he did against Dallas in the win. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this game. Now, Miami and Houston. This is the game that if you're a Texans fan, you have to win to get a little confidence boost. This is the beginning of the 11-day gauntlet, although I would like to say 3-game and 10-day gauntlet because it seems more legendary than 3 games and 11-day gauntlet as well. But you're taking on 3 potential playoff teams. First up with the Miami Dolphins. Now, Miami, of course, coming off a dramatic overtime victory over the New York Jets. They're currently sitting at 6-7. Fortunately for Houston, they are hosting the game. Unfortunately for them, they're taking on a Miami team that seems to have turned the tides. Tua's playing well. You got Tyreek Hill still in the mix. It's going to be a very tough game. Now, last week, I picked against Houston, or actually a couple weeks ago, I picked against Houston to lose to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville did lose that game, so I got my first ever loss when I picked against Houston, thank goodness. But this is a bit of a tough one. I really want to see Houston respond, especially that the defense is going to be without Al-Aziz Shair, who was suspended for that hit, which we won't get into much. But I want to see the offense play well. I want to see the offense take advantage of miscues and all that. And I want to see the defense fired up and try to figure out a way to stop Tua and the offense. But it's tough. And this is where I feel like the biggest test for Houston's season is going to come into play. Are they a team that's going to make a run for at least the AFC Championship game, if not more? Or are they a team that's just going to be stuck in mediocrity and we'll be like, well, I guess we're going to have to wait till next year to see if this team can make the next step. This is the big test. And as much as I want to say Houston should take care, get this one or, use this as a confidence win, I'm going to have to pick Miami. So I'm sorry, Houston, but I want you guys to prove me wrong. So Miami will get the win there. Baltimore and the Giants. I know I spent the last couple of minutes talking about Houston and Miami, but I think the Ravens are trying to get themselves back into the thick of things. They're currently 2 back of the AFC North lead over the Steelers, and they're taking on the Giants. This should be a game that I think Baltimore takes care of without question. Lamar Jackson should be able to lead the Ravens back into fruition. So I'm going to say Baltimore wins that game. I'm going to go ahead and pick Jacksonville to beat the New York Jets because I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently Aaron Rodgers has said that, or basically let it be known that if he loses to the Jaguars, he's going to retire on the spot. So I don't think that's going to happen, or I don't know if that's basically true or not. But with Aaron Rodgers these days, you just don't know what he's thinking. But I think Jacksonville is going to be able to get a little bit of momentum here. They had an ugly win against the Titans, but I think this one should be a game where they should be able to bounce back, even though it's going to be a bit of a toss-up. So I'm going to see Jacksonville get this one. And we got Carolina and Dallas. Surprise, surprise, ladies and gentlemen. I'm picking Carolina to beat the Dallas Cowboys because the Cowboys, they find a way to Leon let the situation like they did against Cincinnati. So, yeah, it's a real heartbreaking moment down for Dallas. Not for me, of course, but anyways, I think Carolina is starting to turn things around. Bryce Young is starting to show what he is capable of as far as being the quarterback that a lot of people expected him to be. He's definitely been a very good improvement. needless to say, the Panthers have lost their last 3 games. But I think Carolina should find a way to get themselves a win against Dallas and turn things around a bit. They won't make the playoffs, but if they somehow finish the season strong with about 6 or 7 wins, it should be a remarkable confidence boost for the people of Charlotte. Tampa Bay and the Chargers. I got Tampa Bay this one. I think the Buccaneers, are looking to get themselves a little more control in the NFC South. They're currently up by 1 game after winning their last 3. So Baker Mayfield and company will continue to build on that momentum, hopefully, as they do against the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. Now, Indianapolis and Denver. Here's the situation as far as Indianapolis is concerned. They need to win this game and hope that Houston loses to keep themselves in position to potentially overtake the Texans for the South Division lead. They're 2 games back. If they lose and Houston wins, the Texans clinch the division, which means the Colts have no shot of winning the division, but still have a little bit of a chance to make a run for the playoffs. And the Colts are taking on the Broncos. This is a tough game because Denver's a team that is expected to, they're threatening in the AFC West, at least. They're in a tie for second along with the Chargers. The Broncos have won their last 3 games, so they got a little bit of momentum here. The question is, will the Colts be able to snap out of it and get themselves a win? And suffice to say, I think this is a game that if I were the Colts, I would think that this is the one that they're going to find a way to win. They got to win against the Patriots. Yeah, of course, it's New England. They're not having a good season, but I think the Colts are going to stun the Broncos, and that should be a big confidence boost for them, especially if the Texans lose to the Miami Dolphins. So if you're Indianapolis, you need to win, but you also need to hope that Houston loses as well. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Then we got Arizona and New England, and talked a little bit about that earlier. Arizona, somehow they've kind of lost a little bit of grip in the NFC West division. They are now down to 3rd, although it is a bit of a tight division as well because the Cardinals are tied with the 49ers. The Cardinals have lost their last 3 games. They're taking on a New England team, and I think this is a game where the Arizona Cardinals are going to turn things around and put an end to that 3-game winning streak because the Patriots are just not having themselves a remarkable year. They're sitting at 3-10, so we'll wait and see. But I think the Cardinals are going to get the W. Detroit and Buffalo. This is probably the game of the week because you have 2 teams, both searching for their first ever Super Bowl, and this would probably be the dream Super Bowl. The Bills and the Lions, 2 franchises that are much like the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians, or Cleveland Guardians, I should say, the World Series back in 2016. That would be a great Super Bowl unless the Kansas City Chiefs have something to say about that in a way. Or maybe some other team down south in H-Town. But, let's not get ahead of ourselves, folks. Let's get back to serious business. But I do think that this game will be an exciting one. I think the Bills, Josh Allen is the favorite to win the MVP. I think he'll have himself a remarkable game. But I also think Jared Goff knows how to lead his team because the Lions have been playing the best football out there. Best record in the NFC. And it's going to be a toss-up. But I think Detroit will continue this momentum here. If the Bills are somehow able to win this one, that would be huge because the game, of course, is being played in Detroit. And I think the last time, or it might have been another team, but last time it was a really remarkable game between the 2 teams. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think Detroit will get the victory here over the Buffalo Bills. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, the Battle of Pennsylvania. You have the Steelers that are 10-3. You have the Eagles that are currently ahead in the division 11-2. There's definitely been a lot of concerns and questions about Philadelphia at this point, but whether there's some beef there between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, as according to Brandon Graham, a teammate, they're saying. Whatever the case, the Eagles are playing well. They've won their last 9 straight games. Then you have the Steelers who are having a remarkable season. And hard to say because you just don't really know, but I'm really willing to bet that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to pull off a little bit of a stunner. Let's see if the whole Philadelphia Eagles supposed beef is a real thing or not, will we? So I think Russell Wilson will be able to turn things around, and let's see if he can get that win for Pittsburgh. Then we got Green Bay and Seattle. And I'm thinking Green Bay here just because the Packers are, fighting themselves in a little bit of a, looking to get themselves some momentum, hoping to keep their playoff hopes alive. Jordan Love, trying to have a season. Like the Packers are 9-4, so they're kind of losing a little bit of that grip in the NFC playoff picture. But ultimately, I do think that this will be a very tough game for Green Bay against Seattle. I do think they're going to win, but we'll have to wait and see there. 2 games left, Minnesota and Chicago, the battle of the NFC North's 2 best teams. And I just think did I say NFL North's best 2 teams? I'm sorry. I kind of got ahead of myself there. The 2 best teams that are not named the Detroit Lions or the Green Bay Packers. I'll say this. Minnesota is having themselves a great season. 10-2. They should be considered more. They should be given a lot of respect and everything. And so we'll just have to wait and see on that as in a sense. Minnesota and Chicago, I'm going to go ahead and say Minnesota wins that game. Then finally, we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Las Vegas Raiders. And so, yeah, it's a remarkable game. I think the Falcons will win over the Raiders as well. So my winners for this week, the Rams, the Commanders, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Buccaneers, the Colts, the Cardinals, the Lions, the Steelers, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Falcons all get wins this week. That is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, and that is going to do it for this edition of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. And folks, again, you can listen to this podcast on my YouTube channel at KWCLINE91, and you can also listen to it on Spotify and Podbean. So have yourselves a great day, and folks, cannot wait for the 50th episode of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping. I might have a few surprises in store for you, but we'll have to wait and see on that. So with that being said, hope you guys have yourselves a great time, and go Crocaholics.